Hello, Quinn. How are you?
Good, Seraj. How are you?
Nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
So let me set the stage here quickly, and then we can go into the session itself. Okay.
Yep.
So for those of you who don't know, AcuityAds is a Canadian publicly owned company that invented Illumin, a omni-channel journey automation platform, which is one of its first kinds in the ad tech industry. Um, I'm going to be the moderator for this forum with Quinn, who, as Jesse just introduced, is the global VP of brand marketing. Quinn, why don't you do this? Why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little background on Lenovo?
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Seraj. And hello to everyone who's listening. Thanks for taking the time. So, like you said, I'm currently the VP of Global Marketing at Lenovo. Lenovo, for those who don't know, we're a huge technology company. We're about a $70 billion company. We're global. We're founded in China, but now operate in about 180 markets around the world. We grew up really selling ThinkPad and are known a lot in the B2B space for our ThinkPads. But we also own everything from Motorola on the phone side all the way through to being the world's one of the world's top supercomputer companies. So we've got a really wide range of technology. We've always been in the hardware space. We're starting to transform that. And I've been with Lenovo for about 8.5, 9 years now. I came from the agency background, so I was on the ad agency side. I worked at Ogilvy, I worked at McCann, at Arnold, at a number of other agencies. Coming up, always starting to focus on technology marketing. Today at Lenovo, I look after kind of the full range of brand marketing for the company. I look after the strategy of where we want to go as a business, and then all the way through to the design language, to the content and the campaigns that we put out. So, pretty broad scope across Lenovo marketing globally.
Yeah, that's quite an extensive scope there. I think there is one more thing you didn't mention, the fact that you actually served IBM.
Yes.
And
Yeah. So
was
when I was at Ogilvy, I spent probably about 10 years working on IBM and doing IBM advertising. And it was, not to date myself, but it was all the way back in the e-business days when it first started out, when IBM was really ahead of the game in looking at how the internet could be used for business and for commerce, and saw that all the way through to probably about 8 years ago when I stopped working with them, and it's just a fabulous experience. I think that um, they're an amazing technology company. They're an amazing marketing company, and the relationship between Ogilvy and IBM that I was part of was just, it was kind of a moment in time in my career that I really got a ton out of.
That's very, very interesting. I'm sure it's very relevant. Now, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Lenovo spun off of IBM? Is that
Yeah, sort of. It technically wasn't a spin-off. It was a company in China called Legend that was the largest PC company in China. And Legend actually acquired the ThinkPad brand from IBM and used that, renamed as Lenovo, and used that as kind of their footprint in the rest of the world to start to go out and become the leader in the world. So today we're the number one PC company in the world, but back when Legend acquired ThinkPad, I think the combined entity was about number eight. So there was a lot of growth, a lot of it on the back of kind of the Eastern philosophy and management system that Legend had paired with the kind of the global clout of the ThinkPad brand, and really bringing those together and turning it into a PC powerhouse, but that also spanned out, like I said, in both directions, further out into devices with phones, tablets, smart devices, and then further into the data center, all the way through edge computing, cloud, into supercomputers.
Thank you. That sets the stage really well. So let's start there. Now, Quinn, we can't really assume anything at this point about the established practices, assumptions of the business as you've had. Just the 2 years, past 2 years have changed just about everything, right? In the way we think about things. And so I think the way we're going to go about this conversation is set the stage of how you've seen the evolution in just the last 2 years, and then talk about how that leads to the marketing going this year and forward. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's how we will frame this. So if you were to just look at the 2 years, first of all, let's start with what changes have you observed in both the consumer side and the commercial side in
Yeah.
terms of the behavior as it pertains to the business, just so that we know what's really happened here, right?
Yeah. No, it's a really good question. I mean, it's I don't think as the pandemic started, we had, like everybody, had no idea what the change was going to be like. We're fortunate in that the way that consumers change their preferences, the way that businesses change through the pandemic has been beneficial to us. I know as a company, I know it hasn't been to a lot of others. And let me talk a little bit about why. I think on the consumer side, I think probably everyone on the call can relate to this, but we saw the rise. Everyone was shut in their homes, and so the rise of both work from home and learn from home as trends was steep. I mean, it was straight up. And as a company that provides stuff for both of those scenarios, whether it's the PCs, the monitors that are kind of the core of what we sell in that world, to the things that we resell, everything that you can imagine, from like your webcams to your desks to your chairs to your mouse pads, all the accessories. We saw consumer. It was a really interesting. Someone put it really nicely that it went from one PC per house to one PC per person, and that change, that fundamental, everyone needing their own computer so that they could work from home, learn from home, just foundationally changed our business. And it just, from a volume and a share perspective, kind of catapulted the entire PC industry. But we actually were able to take advantage of some of that, relative to our competitors, not take advantage of the pandemic, but just to take advantage of the opportunity business-wise, and leverage as well. So we saw the consumer. I mean, they pivoted immediately into having to do those two things from home, which really affected us positively from a business perspective. And then from a commercial perspective, from a corporate perspective, I think that a lot of the companies that had been kind of slow rolling, slow playing the digital transformation, the companies that knew that they had to transform at whatever area it was in, whether it's moving to the cloud or investing in edge computing or building out their security systems, all of that infrastructure that they were planning to invest on over time, that was expensive and challenging, that they were contemplating, they suddenly said, we should have done that, because they realized how unprepared they were as businesses for this massive change from the pandemic. And they immediately flipped to say, all right, let's do it now. And so on the B2B side, we saw this massive rush to accelerate the time frames of digital transformation from all of our customers. And so it's stuff that we had kind of road mapped out with customers for years went to months. And so it was a push on us to say, all right, we've got to take that commercial side of the business, not only start delivering PCs as well, so it's kind of the knock-on effect of more people needing computers, but also when you get into the infrastructure space, more and more businesses were trying to transform, to prepare for the next pandemic, to just handle the current pandemic. All of those things kind of catapulted our B2B business up as well.
So now, obviously, the natural part of that is the onus on you and your team in terms of how they reframe the way the marketing happens, right? So
Yeah.
the way to look at it is, then how does Lenovo's brand marketing strategy evolve as a result of all these shifts? I mean, the shifts are happening in mindset, they're happening in behavior, they're changing in lifestyle, the way you defined it.
Yeah.
How did that all sort of transpire with you, your organization, the way you think about marketing, all of that?
Yeah, it foundationally changed it. I mean, we've always, as a company, ever since, I've been involved with Lenovo, either, when Legend was buying ThinkPad from IBM, all the way through, from when they were just a PC company, all the way out the various acquisitions into where we are today. And so we've always been transforming. There's a restlessness within the corporate strategy of the company that continually pushes us forward. And so from a brand and marketing perspective, we've always been about, all right, let's plant the flag out ambitiously so that we're going out to the world and talking about Lenovo on our best day. This isn't just a clear-eyed view of the company. This is us saying, like all marketers, polishing it up a little bit, putting it out there and saying, this is what we're about. If you're interested in this, then come to Lenovo. And so that had always been our mentality, and I think that's the right mentality. But with the pandemic, suddenly the future was so different. The pace had accelerated, and where we were going as a company, where our customers were going, became fuzzy. And so we still need to go out and plant that flag and say, all right, on our best day, this is what Lenovo is about. But as we're suddenly accelerating in all of the functions that we've got, we're not quite sure where to plant the flag. And so there was a lot of uncertainty within our team and within the company to say, there's a huge pressure on us around AI. So companies that were thinking about integrating AI into their infrastructure and into the way that they think about their technology are suddenly going, all right, let's do it. Like, bring it. Not necessarily even fully understanding what let's implement AI means, but they want to have those sort of conversations with companies like Lenovo. And so we need to be experts in AI, we need to be experts in edge and cloud and all of these various areas that we are building, that suddenly customers are coming to us with a hair on fire request for not only product but expertise. And so we're looking at it going, to what we have deep AI capabilities, but to what extent do we go out there and say Lenovo is an AI leader? Because there's such demand that we're going to get swarmed on that front, versus edge, versus cloud, versus device, all these other areas. And so it suddenly became a really really positive but a really challenging issue, which is saying we're getting bombarded by strategic requests from customers saying we need help in these areas. And we know how to do all of them, but how do we brand ourselves as a leader? Like, what is the thing that we go and say we do? We don't want to just be an innovation leader because it's too broad. We want to pick a sector, pick a specialty, and really go deep on that. But there's so much demand out there that it's challenging. And then on the flip side, I think everyone knows about the chip shortage and the issues out there with supply. We're on the other side, like all of our competitors, having trouble fulfilling on all of this demand because of the chip shortage. So it has been, I would say, it's been a challenging time. It's been a positive time because we're fortunate enough to be growing as a company. But I always look for that clarity of, all right, what problem are we trying to solve, and what does success look like? And both were fuzzy.
Where have you landed in terms of the way you're describing right now, right?
Yeah,
Components, devices, individual, answers to I want to buy X,
yeah,
to I want an office.
yeah,
I
yeah,
want, I want to secure my company
yeah.
from, in digital space. What have you done? What has the brand really done to really plant that flag? How do you position yourself now?
We don't, there isn't something in market that is definitively how we're going to position ourselves. So we're still in process right now, but I'll tell you that a lot of the focus is to change from talking about what we sell to talking about how customers buy it. And so I think we've all had experiences when you buy a car. There's different ways you buy a car, you lease a car. There's now when you buy a very expensive phone, you can either buy the phone outright or you can essentially lease it. And we're looking at that same model with all of our technology and talking to our customers about that to say the future is uncertain. I mean, it was easy to, as an IT manager in the past, pre-pandemic, to say, okay, I need to place an order for 10,000 PCs, and then in 3 years, I'm going to get another 10,000 PCs. It was very relatively predictable. Today, the world is so crazy and so hard to define that you, customer, need a safer, smarter way to ensure that you're buying the right technology, that you always have the latest, that you're getting the best security, you're getting the best service. So we're really looking at how do we flip to that service-led model where customers are starting to buy everything from us as a service. So it's not only devices, it's not only, get your phone as a service rather than as just an outright purchase. But if you want security, how do we sell security as a service? If you want to buy access to a supercomputer, you don't want to buy the supercomputer. You want access to it, and you want that access to be delivered with maintenance and service and security and everything like that. So it's just a fundamental change of moving from a kind of a hardware-led company to a services-led solutions company. And I was going to say it's easy to say. It took me a while to say it, but it's relatively easy to say. It's very hard to change your business to get there, because it is, when we've got about just over 60,000 employees, and they've all grown up as hardware experts. And to now say we're still making hardware, we're also making software, but we're selling it as a service. Again, it's that flag planting becomes difficult, because a lot of people like myself who spend a lot of time talking about this in the planning meetings and the strategy meetings, we can be quite quick to say, all right, let's go run an ad that says we're a service-led solutions company. And then you realize that it's a slower transition than that. Things take time to actually move. The challenge with that is the pandemic has just poured fire on everything, or poured gas on everything, on every fire. So it has, anytime we're saying, all right, we've got to move in a measured, slow way towards that goal, it's like, no, faster, and kind of off we go. So we're on a path to being seen as a service-led solutions company. We're already starting to talk about that in the marketplace. We have the ability to deliver it. It's like what I said before, the more you put out that message, the more excitement and interest there is from customers, the more volume you get. And with a supply shortage on the back end, you have to really balance your ability to promote yourself and get that interest in, with the ability to actually then deliver it.
Got it. So, Quinn, this is beautiful. You've articulated it extremely well, and I'm really genuinely understanding the complexity of your business and the way you're trying to manage the different components of it. I see it in two ways, and correct me if I misunderstood something. I see it as there is the market-facing component of your sort of strategy, communication, and so forth, dealing with the customers and the evolving dynamics there. And then there is the organizational component of it, which is all the ways in which the organization fully internalizes that message.
Yeah.
And begins to behave accordingly to deliver against that proposition and the positioning that you're putting in the market. So there's sort of this whole thing has to tie together, right?
Yeah.
All the way through. It may never be perfect, but you're trying really hard to make sure it syncs up on both sides of the house. Amazing tension to have, right? So the question then becomes, I'm going to go to a topic that's been discussed for a decade. The customer doesn't care about any of that. What they want is, I recognize I have a problem. And Lenovo is one of the few answers out there at some level. And so the customer is on a journey. We talk about that, right? There are many touch points from the message they receive and how they may have understood Lenovo as a brand before versus what they're hearing about it now. And they will just go on that path, whether you look at the consumer side of it or you look at the commercial side of it, right? If you were to look at that journey, because you have the perspective, look, you've been in this business long and you've understood the category reasonably well here with all these different touch points. When you look at the journey, where do you see the most friction at this point?
That's a really good question. I think, I think it varies between consumer and commercial. So I'll B2B, B2C. So I'll answer them kind of separately. I think on the B2B side, the proposition we're putting out to companies is very different, very unexpected from Lenovo, very different than the way that they usually consume technology. And so they're used to coming to us and saying, I want to buy 10,000 ThinkPads. And we're flipping it around to say to them, we have a different way of giving you access to those ThinkPads. And in fact, instead of coming to us and telling us what you want, why don't we sit down and tell me what you're trying to achieve, and let us come, because it might be 10,000 ThinkPads, it might be a different solution that you need, and let's get into that strategic conversation. So the friction that I see is not actually top of the funnel. So it's not out there where we're saying, all right, let's make more people aware of Lenovo. It's not even in the consideration or preference. People in the B2B side who know Lenovo trust us and are coming to us. It's in that conversion. It's in that, how do you change the conversation that you're having with customers that you've had as customers for decades? How do you change the conversation with new customers to flip it to say, rather than what you're asking for, rather than the RFP you're giving us for X number of PCs, why don't we talk about your security needs, and let's talk about how what you're trying to secure might actually change what you need to acquire from us, and then let's talk about how you actually acquire it. And so it becomes I'll never say our business was easy in the past, but it goes from, at that stage, a transaction where it's like, you want 10,000 of these things? All right, let's negotiate how we get you 10,000 of these things, to a much more strategic conversation. And that pivot, there's a ton of friction in. I mean,
Yes.
we know over the years how to, if you ask for this, how to get you this.
Yep.
We're learning how, from a company perspective, but also from a marketing perspective, how to pivot that conversation in a way that the customer has that moment where they go, huh, yeah, no, actually that is what I want to talk about. That's actually much more critical. That's what yes, you've heard me, and that is the pain point that I've got. The pain point isn't I need 10,000 PCs. The pain point is I lose sleep over my network being secure. That's what I'm really worried about. Let's talk about that. By the way, we'll also get you 10,000 PCs. So it's right at the, almost not just before the point of sale, that last mile on the B2B side, that really gets it. And then on the consumer side, I mean, the problem I see is just the noise. I mean, if you're a consumer, if you've got an old phone and you're starting to think about a new phone, I mean, the sophistication of the targeting techniques that sense that you need a new phone, and start bombarding you with all of these different messages, and I'll just take phones for an example, but all of the phone providers are incredibly savvy digital marketers, and the poor consumer is just bombarded by opportunities almost before they even know that they need this product. And so breaking through that and doing it in a way that is really engaging, really compelling, and has that consumers go, oh, like, quiet all the noise. I'm interested in this. I'm going to walk into Verizon and ask for a Motorola. So it's the age-old marketing problem, but it's getting exponentially worse, which is, how do you break through all the clutter and the noise?
Got it. No. So now what's the next logical thing that's going to come here, right? Once you know that challenge is breaking through the noise, that means we have to lead to the consumption habits, the media consumption habits, where the consumers are, where the eyeballs are, where your target consumer is, and how you have segmented your market and so forth. What is your perspective now in terms of the role of digital versus traditional media at Lenovo?
Yeah.
How do you think of it?
That's a really interesting one. I mean, digital versus traditional is a really interesting question, because I think I and we here, like many others, over the last probably 10 years, would just continue to sprint up the digital mountain, and say, as you look at that pie chart that shows digital versus traditional spend in your business, you wanted the digital to continue to get to be a bigger piece of the pie, and the traditional to be smaller. And you could see why. I mean, you could look at all of the different metrics and understand that, addressability, engagement, all of those things, even just measurability, the ability to actually prove a return on investment in the digital space, made a lot of sense. So digital made made our marketing more effective, made all of our lives easier. I think what we're seeing, not I think, what we're seeing is that uh, traditional A still plays a very important role, and actually as the privacy issues increase, particularly in the digital space, and as the clutter in the digital space increases, and I will say that as the sophistication of being able to predict and target you increases, traditional is actually breaking through more and more. So I'm not advocating a flip of the pie chart to be primarily traditional. I do think digital has a absolutely critical role, but we've looked at ways to really cut through with traditional media, to it almost surprise people because they're not used to seeing really innovative advertising. And we've started using digital means in traditional media to really break through. So not just falling prey to the more digital has been really important to us, but taking a really clear-eyed look at the media plan and saying, all right, you know, is the digital continuing to work? Are we truly cutting through? Is there an opportunity to do something really different in the traditional space that will help to supplement the digital and increase that level of cut through?
That's very interesting. So I have a couple observations on this thing, Quinn. One is that, as you know, for the past 2 decades, right, or even longer, right, the split and allocations in the marketing budgets, media budgets, have been, is it branding and awareness, or is it performance and so forth? But one of the things you just said is traditional isn't traditional.
Right.
There is so much changing. Traditional, to so much extent, is becoming addressable.
Yeah.
And so where is this allocation thing you can do now? Do you think in terms of those above the line, below the line kind of metrics? How does this whole thing work out in your mind, in the way you?
Yeah. It's funny, we banished the above the line, below the line from marketing, and it took about 2 years to get rid of people talking about it like that for exactly that reason. I think there's too much blending. I think what you said is exactly right. I think that even traditional media, I would say we don't use traditional media. We find non-digital, we find ways to use non-digital media opportunities in really interesting ways. I'll give you an example. It's one I just saw. Our team in Japan was using, we've got a consumer PC product called a Yoga, which is a beautiful, really innovative product, but it's just gorgeous. I mean, it is really elegant. It's targeted at people who not only care about performance but also aesthetics, and it's just a lovely, beautifully designed computer. I'm not just pitching it. That is actually relevant to this. But the Japan team did a traditional out of home buy, or did an out of home buy, but used 3D out of home, which I'd never seen before, where there was a kind of this photorealistic image of a model with her yoga that was on a flat board, and it comes to life in a 3D way where the model actually comes out of the board with the product and is able to interact with those going past, and it's surreal. I mean, I haven't been to Japan recently, but watching the videos of it, you're just left going, how the hell does that work? And you see people lined up behind this like bus shelter just watching it happen, and it doesn't get better than that. I mean, that's the ultimate if you look at what I was calling digital media, where you put tens or thousands of impressions at people to try to break through. This is one unit that people are lining up to stare at and taking pictures of and videos of and sending it to their friends. So you go, wow, that act from a marketing perspective, that's brilliant. And so do you look at that as traditional media? Do you look at that as digital media? It's a merge of the two. And I think I won't say that's the future, because that's a very unique, specific example. But that ability as marketers to not lock ourselves into, all right, we've got to go do this amount of this type, this amount of display, this amount of search, but to start to say, all right, this is the reaction we want to have from our audience, and what are some really different ways to go and achieve that? I mean, it's fundamental marketing mindset, but you can get really lulled into these pitches of, all right, just go do these very very programmatic programs, and there's a role for that, but you've got to bring that really interesting, really innovative cut through method in there, or else you're just going to be part of the noise that people see.
Yes, I think media innovation is really where you're going,
Yeah,
right? Because we become jaded. We tend to just ignore, in general, advertising. We've learned how to sort of just kind of get past it. And to get somebody to pause is a big deal, right? Just getting them to say, oh my goodness, what is this, right?
yeah,
And I think that's really the factor you're trying to. The trouble has always been, Quinn, how do you measure the ROI of that kind of effect, right?
yeah.
And have you gotten past that? Like, is this something that you just kind of say, you know what, I know it's going to work, it's going to do something that I can't get anyplace else, right? Is that how do you
Yeah,
justify?
yeah, totally. I think we go into it knowing that there's a portion of our media spend that we will not be able to measure, and we're quite vocal about that up front to say here's the portion of the media plan, which is the majority of the spend that we can measure down to the penny, and can report back and go, all right, against all these KPIs, here's how it performed. And then there's a percentage of our media plan that is the kind of the moonshot or the innovative or whatever you want to call it, that are the things that are truly new, truly different, that we're placing a bet on. And, you know, we don't even know if they'll work or not. Never mind, are they going to continually improve ROI, or can we even measure them? So those are the really exciting things. And we can, I mean, we're a big public company. We can't spend the majority of our dollars on that. We've got to do tried and true proven stuff for the majority. But that's the really fun part. The ones where you don't know if they're going to work. You don't know what the return will be. People haven't figured out how to measure them yet. And those are the ones where you start to get really excited.
On that topic, you literally enticed me to ask this question now that you've gone down the innovation lane. So have you given any thought to all this buzz around metaverse and the crypto, the NFTs and so forth? What role are these things going to have in your marketing investment profile?
So I'll be honest, I'm struggling. I've thought a lot about the metaverse. I'm struggling to separate my view as a human from my view as a marketer on this one, because I think that when I take when I look at, or maybe it's my view as a parent versus a marketer. When I look at my kids, when I look at a lot of people I know, when I look at my own behavior, a lot of the challenges out there around mental health, around even when you get to the inability to do anything about climate change and things like that, I think stem from spending way too much time focused on our phones, focused on our PCs, just head down in social media, in that digital universe that's right there. And I think that we're losing the ability to relate to each other as we once did. I think we're losing the ability to focus. I think we're losing the ability to really form a good view of how we are as people and our self value. So I think there's a lot of challenges that come from digital media, and I work in digital media, so I am trying to be part of the solution here as much as I can. But I look at it, and my instinct as a human, as a parent, is to say what we don't need is more deeper experience there. And what I don't want to see is everyone strapping on AR, VR goggles, settling back in their recliners, ordering from Amazon, ordering from DoorDash, and never leaving the recliner and living in this virtual world. So that is my personal view on the metaverse. I don't think that that's taking us to a really positive place. I can't wait to be proven wrong on that. As a marketer, it's intriguing. I think it is. You look at it and go, it's very similar. So I wasn't, I was not working prior to the internet. I'll say that, thankfully, but I was there when the internet really started to become that engine of commerce, and it just completely changed the marketing landscape, 1,000%. Like it suddenly opened up this entirely new landscape for marketers to suddenly go and play with and to discover all of these different way banners and at the very start and all of these things that you could go and do and ways to reach people and and it's still, as we said, it's still evolving. And so it just created this real dimension and depth to marketing that was intriguing. And I think the metaverse will be, again, exponentially impactful, as much so or more than the advent of e-commerce and e-business, because suddenly you've got a whole nother vast world in which there's infinite marketing opportunities. And none of us really have thought through what those will be. And we'll be talking about traditional marketing in the metaverse, which is the way we do digital marketing today, and then non-traditional, which is the stuff that we haven't even thought of yet that's out there. So I think, I would summarize it to say, as long as it does not destroy humans and society, it's going to be a brilliant thing for marketers and business.
So I have a couple more things, and I'm going to blend in one of the questions that has popped up from one of the audience members as part of this thing, okay? So first thing is, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. Because you run a global brand and you're dealing with all sorts of tensions in one form or the other, what a global brand is, what a local brand is, so forth. A question on which you said a lot when we were preparing for this thing. If I were to ask you if this is something that you've lived with for a while, is that a challenge that still kind of stays top of mind for you, that you think about, that you worry about, and so forth? And have you been able to find some sort of an answer that you can be in peace with? How do you think about that?
I haven't. I think it's sort of my holy grail, and probably the holy grail for most in global marketing. I think there is no. I don't know that there is no. I'll boil it down super tactically. There is no ad that you can run that works in the U.S. and China and India and Russia and Brazil equally effectively, even if you translate it into the language. I think that there's such nuance to the culture in each of these markets, to the talent that you feature in the ads, to the way, the humor that you use, to every facet of how humans communicate with each other varies so much market to market, that this idea of running one campaign globally is almost, I would say, impossible. Let me put it differently. I've been trying to do it for more than 20 years, and you can't get there. There's puts and takes always, and so it's the discussion, the tension that we always have. The discussion we always have is, what can we keep consistent globally? What are the aspects of the brand that rightly can be consistent globally, that will be the beacons that people can recognize as Lenovo, not only visually, but the look, the feel, the tone, the voice, the morals, the values. Like, what are those things that translate across the world? And then what are the things that need to be hyper local? And then how do you bring that together? And again, to get tactical, how do you produce it in as efficient of a way as possible, getting to market as fast as possible, as inexpensively as possible? So if we had another hour, I have a really kind of long, complicated answer on how to do that, which is essentially how we do our global campaigns. And it gets down to everything from, how we plan them, how we structure our visual identity, how we cast them, how we handle the translation in each market. There is everyone, at least particularly outside of marketing, who come to us and say, "Oh, why don't you just run one campaign globally?" That's a very simple ask with a very difficult answer to it. So I, if anyone has figured it out, definitely let me know. I'd love to talk about it. But I've never found an easy answer. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of thought, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of input, and then an imperfect product, in the sense that it's not consistent. It's consistent in certain areas, but it is by design also really unique to each market. So it's the hardest, it's the thing I struggle with most, probably, in marketing.
Got it. Here's a question, somewhat related to this, from one of the audience members. Does purpose have a role in marketing the way you think about it for Lenovo?
Yes, 100%. It is purpose is the most important thing that we have, because in the pandemic, so that's sort of one layer of complexity in a 60,000 person company in 180 markets, in a world where there's polarization in many of those markets, and in a society where there's a lot of divisiveness and chatter, and in a media landscape where it's really hard to break through. The one common is purpose, and that's the thing that holds the company together. That's the thing that holds the brand together, and that's the thing that we all look to as we as marketers within Lenovo are all off in our silos and in our stovepipes, creating our things, trying to be as consistent as possible. The North Star is purpose, and so I think spending the time as marketers and as brand leaders to crack that and to make sure that the CEO, if a reporter said to the CEO, "What's your company's purpose?" that the CEO would give the right answer. That's the goal. It's not that all marketers know it. It's not that it's translates into the line on the ads. It's that that most senior person in the company buys into it and believes it. And whether you call it your purpose or your vision or whatever it is, it's that one guy. It's why you exist as a company. It's why anyone would care if you went out of business. It's why the employees get up in the morning and get out of bed and come in even on the toughest days. So answering that why is really critical, and it's the thing that to me cuts through all the rest of the mess that I mentioned and helps to continually let us be aligned in how we go do marketing.
We're very close to wrapping up. I would have actually asked you to elaborate if Lenovo has landed on a clear purpose, but I can tell one thing, Quinn. The way you described at a personal level how you see media, innovation, technology versus your commercial interests and marketing interests, there seems to be plenty of room for Lenovo to figure out what its North Star really is. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I'll just very quickly say, I mean, it's challenging. It's relatively easy either in a startup, I think, or that's a founder-driven startup, or in a company that is built around a product or an offering that lends itself to a purpose, to get there. You still got to do the work to get there, but that's achievable. We're looking at it from a massive engineering based global technology company that's super rational, super left brain in how we look at the world. And so to try to really get the company aligned around what's considered more of a right brain emotive kind of purpose statement, the answering the why rather than the what and even the how is challenging. We're getting there. It might be a continuous process. We've got a statement, we're using it, we're looking at do we evolve it and improve it and bring more emotion to it. So it's always a journey, but we've devoted a significant amount of time and energy to it, and it's been worth every second.
Excellent. Cohen, I must tell you, I am so delighted you could join us today. It was so insightful. I'm sure our audience found your commentary and your observations and your perspective on marketing
That's
really
great.
valuable.
Thanks, Siraj, and thanks for taking the time, and thanks to everyone who listened. I appreciate it. I know it's a Friday and it's busy, so I appreciate you tuning in.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And thank you to our audience. Take care.